Hustle culture teaches you that working multiple jobs will make you rich and free. What if I told you that hustle culture is actually designed to make you exploit yourself? This sounds logical because we see successful entrepreneurs talking about their grinding years. We assume that extreme work ethic creates wealth and independence. But there's something that doesn't add up. The hardest hustlers remain financially stressed. Meanwhile, people who inherited wealth talk about passive income and work-life balance. Everyone knows the hustle culture story. You start a side business, you work weekends, you skip vacations, you optimize every moment for productivity. Eventually, you break through to financial freedom. Why do most people who follow hustle culture advice end up more tired and stressed? Why are they no wealthier than when they started? This sounds like success because we see social media posts about grinding. We see motivational quotes about outworking everyone. We hear stories of people who built businesses from nothing, but there's something that doesn't quite fit. Hustle culture advocates often look exhausted. They're promoting a lifestyle that's supposed to create freedom. The hustle culture deception works by convincing workers that their economic problems stem from insufficient personal effort. It shifts focus away from systemic wealth concentration. While hustlers exhaust themselves working multiple income streams for survival wages, wealth holders generate passive income. They earn money from assets and ownership stakes. If this kind of self-exploitation disguised as entrepreneurship interests you, subscribe to Prof. Jung Explained. Share this video with someone who's been told they need to hustle harder to succeed. They need to understand how hustle culture actually prevents rather than creates wealth building. The system creates fundamentally different relationships with work and wealth. This depends on your starting economic position. When we talk about hustle culture, we mean completely different experiences. Different economic classes have different experiences. For wealth holders, hustle culture rhetoric provides moral justification for inequality. They benefit from other people's increased work effort. They can talk about entrepreneurship and grinding, but their wealth comes from ownership, inheritance, and capital appreciation. For workers, hustle culture means sacrificing personal time, health, and relationships. You work additional jobs or start businesses that typically fail. You're told that failure reflects insufficient commitment. The system ignores systemic barriers. Think about the most successful people you know personally. How much of their wealth comes from hustle? How much comes from assets, connections, or family background? This explains something curious about hustle culture messaging. The same people promoting extreme work ethic often benefit most from other people following that advice. They don't necessarily follow it themselves. The difference isn't about work ethic or entrepreneurial spirit. It creates systematically different outcomes. Hustle culture channels worker frustration into self-blame. It prevents system analysis. But here's where it gets interesting. The hustle culture deception doesn't just exploit existing worker energy. It actually creates the conditions that make hustling feel necessary. At the same time, it ensures that hustling rarely leads to actual wealth building. Consider how hustle culture handles the relationship between time and money. The core message is that you should maximize every moment for productivity. You should treat time as your most valuable resource. You should optimize your schedule for income generation. This creates what economists call time scarcity. Psychology. People feel constantly behind and pressured to work more hours. They don't question why their hourly compensation is insufficient for basic financial security. The time scarcity mindset prevents people from recognizing something important. Wealth doesn't come from selling more hours. It comes from owning assets that generate income without time investment. Meanwhile, the focus on personal time optimization distracts attention from wealth concentration mechanisms. These mechanisms ensure that most new income flows to asset holders rather than workers. The time scarcity also creates what psychologists call productivity anxiety. People become obsessed with maximizing output. They measure efficiency constantly. They try to eliminate wasted time. But this anxiety prevents strategic thinking about what types of activities actually create wealth. The anxiety ensures that hustlers focus on incremental improvements to existing activities. They don't question whether those activities can ever generate significant wealth. This happens regardless of how efficiently they're executed. But the hustle culture deception becomes even more sophisticated. Let's examine how it handles business ownership and entrepreneurship. Hustle culture promotes starting businesses as the path to financial freedom. But most hustle culture businesses are actually just freelance work or service provision. They recreate employment relationships under entrepreneurship rhetoric. These businesses typically require constant personal involvement. They generate income only when the owner works. They compete in markets where pricing gets driven down. Other hustlers, desperate for income, drive prices down. The entrepreneurship narrative disguises the reality. These are often survival strategies rather than wealth-building strategies. It creates the appearance of business ownership, but it doesn't provide the benefits of actual capital ownership. When hustle culture businesses succeed financially, they typically do so by scaling. They employ other people at low wages. This recreates the same exploitation dynamics that make hustling necessary in the first place. The entrepreneurship illusion also creates what business scholars call lifestyle business confusion. People start businesses that generate personal income, but they don't create transferable assets. They don't create scalable systems. They don't create investment returns that characterize genuine wealth building. These lifestyle businesses often trap their owners in self-employment situations. These situations provide less financial security than traditional employment. They require more personal risk and time investment. The confusion between business ownership and wealth building ensures something important. Hustlers exhaust themselves building businesses that can't be sold. These businesses don't generate passive income. They collapse if the owner stops working. Do you notice how hustle culture success stories often involve building businesses? These businesses depend on other people working for low pay. The hustle culture deception also exploits what behavioral economists call optimization fatigue. The constant pressure to maximize productivity creates psychological exhaustion. This prevents people from thinking strategically about wealth building. When all your mental energy gets devoted to scheduling, side projects, and productivity hacks, something happens. You don't have cognitive resources left for understanding investment strategies. You can't analyze economic systems. You can't build genuine assets. This optimization fatigue ensures that hustlers remain focused on increasing their work output. They don't question why increased output doesn't translate into proportional wealth increases. The optimization obsession also creates what cognitive scientists call tactical fixation. People become so focused on improving their execution of specific tasks. They lose sight of whether those tasks serve their larger financial objectives. This fixation prevents hustlers from stepping back to evaluate something important. They can't assess whether their activities are actually moving them toward financial independence, or whether their activities are just keeping them busy while maintaining their economic position. But there's something even more insidious about how the hustle culture deception affects personal relationships. It affects social connection. Hustle culture promotes sacrificing personal relationships, family time, and social connections for work productivity. It claims that successful people are willing to make these sacrifices. Unsuccessful people prioritize comfort over success. This relationship sacrifice prevents people from building the social networks that actually facilitate wealth building. Wealth building typically depends on connections, trust, and collaborative relationships. It doesn't depend on individual grinding. The social isolation created by hustle culture also prevents people from organizing collectively. People can't address the economic conditions that make individual hustling feel necessary. Instead of building solidarity with other workers facing similar economic pressures, hustlers compete with each other. They compete for scarce opportunities while blaming themselves for insufficient success. The relationship sacrifice also creates what sociologists call social capital erosion. The connections, trust relationships, and community bonds that provide economic opportunities deteriorate. Emotional support systems deteriorate. This happens when all personal time gets devoted to income generation. This erosion leaves hustlers financially and emotionally vulnerable. It destroys the social infrastructure that typically supports people through economic difficulties. It destroys access to genuine opportunities. The hustle culture deception also creates what psychologists call entrepreneurship theater. People engage in business-like activities that feel like building wealth, but they don't actually create assets or generate sustainable income. This theater includes activities like building personal brands. It includes creating social media content. It includes networking at entrepreneurship events. It includes consuming business education content that feels productive. but it doesn't address the fundamental challenge of acquiring productive assets. The theater provides psychological satisfaction of entrepreneurial activity, but it ensures that energy gets channeled into consumption rather than genuine wealth building. The entrepreneurship theater also operates through what marketing scholars call aspiration signaling. People purchase products, services, and experiences that signal entrepreneurial identity, but they don't invest in assets that generate income. This signaling consumption includes expensive courses, coaching programs, networking events, and productivity tools. These feel like business investments, but they primarily benefit the industries selling these products to aspiring entrepreneurs. Can you think of any hustle culture activities that feel like building a business, but they don't actually create ownership of income-generating assets? The system also exploits what economists call aspiration commercialization. The desire to build wealth gets transformed into consumption. People buy products and services marketed to ambitious people. Business courses, productivity apps, entrepreneurship coaching, and self-improvement content create industries. These industries profit from people's wealth-building aspirations, but they rarely deliver actual wealth building. This commercialization ensures that hustle culture generates revenue for education and coaching industries. It doesn't create pathways to asset ownership for participants. The commercialization also creates what consumer psychologists call success product addiction. People continuously purchase new courses, tools, and coaching programs. They believe that the next purchase will provide the missing element for financial breakthrough. This addiction ensures that aspiring entrepreneurs remain consumers of success products. They don't become builders of income-generating assets. This creates profitable markets for industries that benefit from perpetual aspiration. They don't benefit from actual achievement, but perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of the hustle culture deception is how it handles something important. It handles a relationship between individual effort and systemic outcomes. Hustle culture attributes economic outcomes to personal characteristics. Things like work ethic, determination, and willingness to sacrifice. It doesn't examine how economic systems distribute opportunities and rewards. This attribution framework ensures something important. People who follow hustle culture advice but don't achieve wealth blame themselves. They blame insufficient effort rather than questioning whether the advice actually works. The individual focus prevents people from recognizing something important. Wealth concentration results from structural features of economic systems. It doesn't result from individual moral failings. The individualization also creates what political scientists call systemic invisibility. Economic policies, wealth concentration mechanisms, and structural barriers become invisible. This happens when all attention focuses on individual behavior and personal responsibility. This invisibility prevents hustlers from recognizing something important. They can't see how monetary policy, tax structures, and regulatory frameworks work. These systematically advantage asset holders while disadvantaging people who depend on labor income. The hustle culture deception also exploits temporal displacement. The promised benefits of current sacrifice are always projected into an uncertain future. Hustlers are told to work extreme hours now for future freedom. Start businesses now for eventual passive income. Sacrifice relationships now for long-term success. This temporal framing makes it difficult to evaluate whether hustle culture strategies actually work. The benefits are always supposed to materialize later. Meanwhile, the immediate costs of hustle culture get dismissed. Stress, exhaustion, social isolation, health problems are dismissed as necessary investments. They're not recognized as warning signs of unsustainable strategies. The temporal displacement also operates through what behavioral economists call future self-illusion. People assume their future selves will be better positioned to enjoy the fruits of current sacrifice. But this ignores something important. Sustained overwork and stress often diminish rather than enhance future capability. This illusion allows hustlers to rationalize present sacrifice, but they avoid realistic assessment of whether their current strategies can actually deliver the promised future benefits. Have you ever noticed how hustle culture advice always promises future freedom, but it demands present sacrifice? The system also creates what political economists call productivity displacement. Instead of demanding higher wages for increased productivity, workers are encouraged to increase their personal productivity. They do this through side businesses and additional work. This productivity displacement benefits employers. They receive increased worker output without corresponding compensation increases. Workers exhaust themselves trying to compensate for inadequate primary income. The displacement also benefits business education, industries. They sell productivity solutions rather than addressing the fundamental issue of wage adequacy. The productivity displacement also creates what labor economists call wage suppression through individualization. When workers blame themselves for insufficient income rather than organizing for better wages, employers can maintain low compensation. Workers exhaust themselves with individual solutions. This individualization prevents collective bargaining and wage advocacy. These might actually address income inadequacy at systemic levels. But there's yet another dimension that makes the hustle culture deception particularly effective. It maintains wealth concentration while appearing to promote wealth building. The system creates what sociologists call meritocracy theater. Hustle culture provides a framework for wealthy people. They can claim that their wealth results from superior work ethic and sacrifice. They don't have to mention inheritance, connections, or structural advantages. This theater allows wealth holders to maintain moral legitimacy. They benefit from systems that concentrate wealth independent of individual effort. Meanwhile, people who follow hustle culture advice but don't achieve wealth serve as examples. They're examples of insufficient commitment. They're not evidence that the advice doesn't reliably create wealth. The meritocracy theater also operates through what social psychologists call attribution asymmetry. Successful people attribute their success to personal characteristics. They attribute others' lack of success to personal failings. They ignore how circumstances and systemic factors affect outcomes. This asymmetry allows wealth holders to maintain superior social status. They avoid responsibility for systems that create and maintain wealth inequality. Consider how the hustle culture deception handles risk and failure. Hustle culture promotes taking entrepreneurial risks, but it ignores how economic position affects the ability to absorb failure. Wealthy people can afford entrepreneurial failures. They have safety nets, family support, and alternative income sources. This allows them to continue taking risks until something succeeds. Poor people cannot afford entrepreneurial failures. Failure can mean homelessness, bankruptcy, or inability to meet basic needs. This makes rational risk assessment very different across economic classes. The hustle culture narrative treats risk tolerance as a moral characteristic. It doesn't recognize it as a privilege. This privilege depends on having adequate financial cushions. The risk handling also creates what economists call survivorship bias amplification. Successful entrepreneurs become visible examples while failed entrepreneurs disappear from view. This creates the illusion that entrepreneurial strategies are more reliable than they actually are. This amplification ensures that hustle culture advice appears to work better than it does. The failures that demonstrate its limitations remain hidden. The rare successes receive extensive publicity. The deception also creates what economists call opportunity cost blindness. The time and energy devoted to hustle culture activities prevents people from pursuing something important. They can't pursue education, skill development, or relationship building. These might actually improve their economic position. When all available time gets devoted to immediate income generation, there's no capacity for longer-term human capital investment. This typically supports genuine upward mobility. This opportunity cost blindness ensures that hustle culture becomes a trap. It prevents the very investments that might create sustainable wealth building. The opportunity cost problem also manifests through what career counselors call strategic myopia. People become so focused on immediate income needs, they cannot invest time in developing skills, credentials, or relationships. These would improve their long-term earning potential. This myopia traps hustlers in cycles. They must continuously work harder to maintain their income level. They can't build capabilities that would allow them to earn more through less effort. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the hustle culture deception is how it convinces people of something. Their individual work ethic determines their economic outcomes. Meanwhile, wealth concentration accelerates independent of worker effort. The system creates the illusion that economic problems can be solved through individual solutions, but the actual determinants of wealth distribution operate at systemic levels. Individual hustling cannot affect these levels. This illusion maintains political support for economic systems that concentrate wealth. It prevents collective action that might actually address wealth inequality. The hustle culture deception ultimately works because it offers the psychological satisfaction of agency and control. but it channels that agency into activities that serve wealth concentration rather than wealth building. But understanding the deception doesn't necessarily lead to abandoning effort or ambition. Rather, it suggests the importance of directing effort towards strategies that actually create assets and ownership. Don't just increase work output. The deception continues because it serves essential functions for wealth holders. It also provides psychological benefits to workers. This makes it difficult to challenge without offering alternative pathways to economic security. Understanding how hustle culture operates reveals something important. Building genuine wealth might require collective action to address wage adequacy and asset access. Individual strategies to work harder within existing economic constraints might not be enough. The hustle culture deception also demonstrates how economic systems can maintain inequality while appearing to reward individual merit. It creates psychological satisfaction for both wealth holders and workers. But it preserves structural advantages that determine actual outcomes. This sophisticated mechanism ensures that cultural narratives about success serve economic systems rather than individual success. It maintains broad social support for arrangements that concentrate wealth among those who already possess it. The pattern reveals how modern societies have developed increasingly subtle methods. These methods maintain economic hierarchies while preserving the illusion of opportunity and mobility. This illusion is for those at the bottom of these hierarchies. Hit subscribe if you want more analysis of how cultural narratives that appear to promote success actually maintain systems. These systems prevent most people from achieving financial security. Share this with someone who's been told they need to hustle harder to get ahead.